and leader? What you need the most is to study business psychology management at Psychologist Institute. These are the reasons why you should choose business psychology management at Psychologist Institute. Business psychology management at Psychologist Institute will teach you how to create a healthy, productive, and mutually beneficial relationship between individuals and organizations. Unlike any other institutions, business psychology management at Psychologist Institute is directly taught by practitioners. You will get an opportunity to take a certification program. Psychologist Institute is also a member of American Institute of Business Psychology and the Association for Business Psychology. You can also get benefits such as access to resources in the form of journals, literature, and get the privilege to participate in webinars. Get connections with institutions and industries that are also member of IOBP and ABP. Be a reliable businessman and leader with Psychologist Institute. Psychologist Institute, transforming hearts and minds. According to the Public Relations Society of America in 2020, a public relations officer is one of the crucial elements for a company to influence and build relationships with other stakeholders. So, Psychologist Institute offers Communication Science Study Program with 3 streams: Strategic Communication, Advertising and Digital Communication, and Broadcasting. You will get the opportunity to obtain a future career as a public relations manager, journalist, radio broadcaster, TV producer, or even an advertising agency owner. Integrated with certifications from John Robert Powers Indonesia and the Mahaka Radio Integra Institute or MARI Institute, you will receive multiple trainings in public speaking, table manners, personal branding, as well as technical TV and radio production, which will improve your employability. Enroll now at Communication Science Study Program, Psychologist Institute. Psychologist Institute, transforming hearts and minds. Do you want to be a virtual reality developer, technical 3D artist, or XR gameplay and tools engineer? Psychologist Institute offers Informatics in Virtual Reality study program. This study program is the answer to the 4th transformation, which is a change in human-oriented computing from DOS, WIM, handheld to AR, VR, or immersive tech. Virtual reality itself is a technology utilizing a simulated experience in a product and service. It is commonly used in the game and entertainment industry, education, health, and many other business lines. Besides, you will learn the industry standard production technologies, including a fully equipped immersive production and motion capture lab, and a wide range of state-of-the-art head-mounted displays. Let's take a look at what an expert says about the Informatics in Virtual Reality study program at Psychologist Institute. Join us at Psychologist Institute and be part of the future technological change. Psychologist Institute, transforming hearts and minds. Do you want to be a reliable businessman and leader? What you need the most is to study business psychology management at Psychologist Institute. These are the reasons why you should choose business psychology management at Psychologist Institute. Business psychology management at Psychologist Institute will teach you how to create a healthy, productive, and mutually beneficial relationship between individuals and organizations. Unlike any other institutions, business psychology management at Psychologist Institute is directly taught by practitioners. You will get an opportunity to take a certification program. Psychologist Institute is also a member of American Institute of Business Psychology and the Association for Business Psychology. You can also get benefits such as access to resources in the form of journals, literature, and get the privilege to participate in webinars. Get connections with institutions and industries that are also member of IOBP and ABP. Be a reliable businessman and leader with Psychologist Institute. Psychologist Institute, transforming hearts and minds. Do you want want to become a public accountant, financial planner, auditor, or a fintech company employee? Calbis Institute offers accounting program with several streams in taxation, auditing, finance essential and fintech, and digital business. During the program, you will be prepared to master the skills in digital accounting, and a certification from the Association of Chartered Accountant or ACCA to improve your professional value will also be provided. So, working at top public accounting firms such as PwC, KPMG International, EY, or Deloitte right after college will no longer be just a dream. Let's see what Calbis alumni have to say about the accounting study program at Calbis Institute. Make your dreams come true with Calbis Institute. Calbis Institute, transforming hearts and minds. In recent years, digital marketing job has grown 112% worldwide. That is why digital marketing skills need to be mastered if anyone plans to become a digital marketer, social media specialist, and entrepreneur in the digital agency field. Calbis Institute offers digital marketing management program where you can learn about SEO or search engine optimization, paid internet advertising, digital marketing analysis, and many more. Integrated with a certification program, the students required to take one of the certification programs including Google Analytics, Google Ads, Hootsuite, HubSpot, MOS, and YouTube. Besides, students will also get the opportunity to join a double degree program at the International University of Applied Sciences, Germany, and Nanjing Xiaochuang University, China. Join the Digital Marketing Management Study Program at Calbis Institute now. Calbis Institute, transforming hearts and minds. Do you want to be a reliable businessman and leader? What you need the most is to study business psychology management at Calbis Institute. These are the reasons why you should choose business psychology management at Calbis Institute. Business psychology management at Calbis Institute will teach you how to create a healthy, productive, and mutually beneficial relationship between individuals and organizations. Unlike any other institutions, business psychology management at Calbis Institute is directly taught by practitioners. You will get an opportunity to take a certification program. Calbis Institute is also a member of American Institute of Business Psychology and the Association for Business Psychology. You can also get benefits such as access to resources in the form of journals, literature, and get the privilege to participate in webinars. Get connections with institutions and industries that are also member of IOBP and ABP. Be a reliable businessman and leader with Calbis Institute. Calbis Institute, transforming hearts and minds.
In the current era of digitalization, everyone is required to have the ability to conceptualize and design a brand, promotional media, marketing media, and creative media using print and digital techniques. Calbis Institute presents the Visual Communication Design Study Program with several streams in graphic design, animation, and digital illustration. You are required to understand the theoretical basis and create your own projects and experiments. Hence, once you graduate, you will be able to pursue a career as an art director, graphic designer, animator, and many other related positions. To support your career, Calbis Institute will provide a certification from Adobe for digital illustration and graphic design streams. Also, a certification from Brandonville Academy, Brandonville Studio for animation stream. With a certification from Brandonville Academy, you have the opportunity to work on original projects from several companies such as Disney, Sony, Warner Brothers, Sega, Netflix, and many more. Express your creativity with Calbis Institute. Calbis Institute, transforming hearts and minds.
In welcoming the era of Technology 5.0, Kalbis Institute prepares the students to be able to develop information systems to support business processes by utilizing the latest information technology. Our program is integrated with certification programs from Google, S3, LearnQuest, and ITIL4 exam preparation that will boost your career in the future. We also work closely with Huawei ICT Academy, SAP, and are also part of the SAP University Alliance. Our students and lecturers can access SAP software and learning content and be inspired to partner with the SAP ecosystem of customers and partners by collaborating with the global network of SAP NextGen chapters and SAP NextGen labs. Our graduates will have the opportunity to become a system analyst, ERP developer, big data analyst, applied information system ERP, business process analyst, and even an ERP implementer. Information Systems Study Program Kalbis Institute offers two streams, Big Data Analyst and Applied Information System ERP. Kalbis Institute will support and provide opportunities to develop a final project that will be useful for your career in the industrial world. Be part of Kalbis Institute and prepare yourself for the era of Technology 5.0. Kalbis Institute, transforming hearts and minds. Okay, good morning and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our webinar series. So today, my name is Natalia and I will be the host for this special event, Salam Hearts and Minds. So today, this event is called a Business Psychology Webinar, A New Horizon for Your Future Career. So before we start the event, I would like to welcome all the speakers and participants to this room. I would like to say hello to Mr. Budi Kurniawan, SAMA, MAK CMA, Vice Rector 3, Marketing and Institutional Development of Kalbis Institute. Hello, Pak Budi.
Hello, Ms. Farah. Good morning and good evening to Kristijan and Marlon.
Thank you very much. And I would like to say hello to Dean of Faculty of Business and Communication, Kalbis Institute, as well as Head of Department of Management. And to our inspiring speakers, Mr. Kristijan Civljak, PhD, and Mr. Marlon Sukal, PhD. I hope I pronounced your surnames correctly, Kristijan and Marlon.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. So both of them are the associate professors at the Chicago School of Business Psychology. So if you guys have questions or are interested in the business psychology in general, in particular, they are the right people to talk to as they are the experts in the field. Now, without further ado, let's start the event by listening to an opening speech from our most humbled and inspiring Vice Rector, Mr. Budi Kurniawan.
Okay, thank you again, Ms. Farah, for hosting this event. Yeah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greeting to all of us. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Yeah. Good morning and salam hearts and mind. Yeah, first we have to praise to the Lord who has given us health so that we can gather today on these occasions. Yeah, before we get started, I would like to express again my sincere appreciation to all of you who generously helped us to make this event come together to become a success. The first one is Pak Rektor, Pak Naik Head of Parmenas, and then Dr. Budi Santoso as Director Marketing and Institutional Development, and our lovely Miss Natalia Faradeta as our moderator for today. And of course, our prominent speakers for today, Dr. Marlon Sukar, MBA, PhD, the Associate Professor from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, and then Dr. Kristijan Civljak, PhD, from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology as well. And also students from various university and high school, and all the invited guests. Yeah, please let me introduce myself. My name is Budi Kurniawan, as a Vice Rector 3, Kalbis Institute for Marketing and Institutional Development. Kalbis Institute itself is a private university owned and professionally and professionally managed by the Kalbe Education Foundation, where all the learning process combines the knowledge owned by the academics and also guest speakers from among practitioners. And with this kind of teaching method, we expect the student to be more prepared to contribute both in the workplace, the community, and also for our nations. This is also in line with our commitment to transform the hearts, souls, and intellectual of all our students. And for today's events, we're very excited to have Marlon and Kristijan to discuss about the business psychology, which is also one of our streaming in management program study. And when we talk about business psychology can be used in every facet of business. And there are some influential ways of business psychology can be used in organization. It could be used in marketing, for example. Marketing professional can apply psychological principles for the new product or service marketing. Or perhaps we can talk about talent recruiting and management. Business psychology can also help human resources to differentiate the job applicants using behavioral science methods. And when we talk about the management, most of the students that come to this meeting this morning probably very interested to go into the business schools. So when we talk about change management can be difficult process for any organizations. So that's why by understanding human behaviors can help managers or top executives to anticipate and mitigate workforce issues. There are just a very small example how we can utilize the business psychology in our life. Business psychology itself have a variety of responsibility within their organizations due to their influential role in employee management, emotional intelligence, and dedications are leading traits in your career of choice. And we can always apply the business psychology method for day-to-day responsibility. And again, by conducting this kind of event, we would like the young generation that present today. We have more than 100 participants for today. We hope that you can be more confident, you can have a strong and independent disciplines, you dare to take risks. You can become very tenacious in your thinking, also in your works. And please be creative and innovative. Always having a big curiosity feeling, so you can continue to learn all the time, and please enjoy the process. Therefore, I would like to thanks again to our special guest today, Marlon and Kristijan, who will present the business psychology materials for the next 1.5 hours. And please do involve actively by asking your question and find out as much as possible what is it about the business psychology. And I would like to thank the International Office of the Kalbe Institute for holding these useful events and all the participants who attend. And I apologize if there are any words that were not agreeable, and congratulations on being even better at handling your future business with business psychology. Salam hearts and mind. And back to you, Ms. Farah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the very inspiring talk, Pak Beka. Now we're going to discuss some interesting topic about business psychology with our inspiring speakers. So Kristijan and Marlon from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology will present some materials for you guys. If you guys have some questions, please put the question in the chat box so that we can address your question one by one at the end of the session. So over to you, Kristijan and Marlon.
Thank you, Natalia. And trust you can hear me okay. And I'm Marlon Sukal, Dr. Marlon Sukal, and it's nighttime here. We're 12 hours behind your time, so it's late for us. But we're happy to be here to present on business psychology. So next slide, please, so we can get into the discussion and overview of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to present on what is business psychology. Woody presented some of what that is, and you also saw in the promotion video on business psychology at the Calvi Institute what it was about. So we'll get into more depth on what that is. Why should you study business psychology? What are the jobs and occupations you should do if you study business psychology? Also, pieces about promoting your career in business psychology, specific around the types of fields that you can get into, the type of jobs, the expected salary. Also, we'll talk a bit about work from home patterns, especially as it relates to the pandemic and how it has changed the way we work, and how we could continue to make proper business decisions around what we do. We'll have a call to action around what you can expect in the business psychology program. We'll open it up for questions and answer. We also encourage you to ask questions, so feel free to ask questions. Towards the end, we'll have time to be able to do that. So a bit about me. I am Dr. Marlon Sukal. I've been with the Chicago School since 2010, so 12 years as a faculty professor. I'm also a consultant and executive coach. I work for various organizations across the country, and my emphasis is really organizational development. I first got my MBA in that with an emphasis in organizational development. My PhD is in industrial organizational psychology. I also have a master's in industrial organizational psychology from Alliant International University. And there you can see some of my expertise in regards to leadership development, talent management, culture transformation, employee engagement, people analytics, change management, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and organizational development. And I'll speak to some of those as we present later today. So that's a bit about me. I'll actually turn it over to Dr. Kristijan, and he will present his experience.
Hello, everyone. You have advantage over me because I can't see all of your faces and you can see mine. My name is Kristijan Civljak. I am originally from Belgrade, Serbia. I've been to the United States now for 20 years. I'm assistant professor in the business psychology program. Dr. Sukal is my colleague, and Dr. Sukal actually was on a panel to hire me, so he has an advantage over me as well. I've been with the school for the past 4 years. And my background is, besides in my previous career, talking about careers, right? As a concert pianist and a musician, which I still do at times. My background is also in international psychology. And the areas in which I work is executive coaching, leadership, especially focusing on cultural issues, things that are related to organizational culture, both generic and specific, meaning organizational culture when it's related to the organizations, and then national culture depending on where we are coming from, because communication styles varied depending on the back of origin. And that's about it. Throughout presentation, you will learn a little bit more, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about the issues in business psychology. Over to you,
Great.
Dr. Sukal.
Great, thank you, Dr. Kristijan. And let's get into what business psychology is. So we talked a bit about what it is based on the promotion video. You saw a bit about that. Woody spoke a bit about what business psychology is. But let's get into a little bit more depth. So industrial organizational psychology, that's actually my PhD. And those terms, for the most part, I use interchangeably. So you will see industrial organizational psychology is predominantly used in the United States. For our program, we use business psychology. So business psychology, also known as industrial organizational psychology, simply put, is everything psychologically based in an organization. So we're studying the human element in an organization. So we study factors that, for instance, motivate employees. How do we enhance working conditions? How do we promote people operations of a business? And really, how do we look at the return on investment of those things? And how do we ensure that we work with business leaders to improve the working lives of their employees that will lead to various performance outcomes through happier and healthier employees? So to reiterate, business psychology is the application of those psychological principles to the workplace anywhere people work, and people work in all different places, all different industries, etc. So if you think about it, business psychology, for that very reason, is extending its scope in regards to where and when and how they work. It is the study of people science, and it is to advance this practice of maximizing human and organizational potential to be able to build better organizations while at the same time ensuring that our employees are working happier and healthier. So if we go to the next slide, we get into why study business psychology for those reasons that I mentioned, right? So to become a business psychologist, you have to find the proper program that would offer you the skills you need to be able to get into this line of work, to become a business psychologist. And I will say in the last 10 years or so, we've seen an explosion of degrees from bachelor's to master's to doctoral programs. There are also certificate programs in business psychology. For instance, the one here at the Business Psychology Management Certificate at the Calvi Institute. So that's being offered. So these programs are developing to cater to these learning needs of future business psychologists, then go out into organizations and do the work that I just mentioned. And these are regulated by particular industries and associations such as the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology and the Association of Business Psychologists. So they regulate these programs to ensure that students and potential students such as yourself who coming into these programs get the skills and the training they need to go out and do some good work. Some other key pieces to mention here in regards to future jobs for business psychologists, places such as the Dictionary of Occupational Titles of the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology shows that it is one of the fastest growing psychological disciplines and a hot job projected to increase at around 14% year over year in terms of jobs for the next 5 years. So business psychologists and the opportunity for them to work in industry is growing. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics based here in the United States, it is one of the fastest growing occupations of all occupations in the United States. You're just seeing such a burst of it, quite frankly. So if we go to the next slide, business psychologists use their training and knowledge in just a variety of settings, and we'll get into depth on what those are. But for the most part, things such as psychometrics and statistics and selecting and hiring employees and understanding the learning principles of training and motivation and numerous social psychological concepts all come into play when business psychologists work with leaders and work with employees to help improve things such as leadership and job satisfaction. So you see the psychological pieces that come into play with this job, which would add to the complexity and why the education of business psychologists is so important. Business psychologists are also not lawyers, but we do play a big part in employment matters, specifically around legal issues such as hiring and salary and promotion practices and fairness in the way we do things. So we take into account some of our laws, such as the Civil Rights Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act and any other legislature around employees and employment. So we also play a part in that. So business psychologists actually know a bit about law and litigation and things of that sort. Business psychologists now too are also becoming quite skilled in things such as sexual harassment and providing training to help avoid cases in regards to that. They're also heavily involved in diversity and equity and inclusion, things that are really big here in the United States, and things that we should be aware of internationally as well. So really the top 3 reasons, if you ask me my opinion, to become a business psychologist and the reasons I became an industrial organizational psychologist is I really wanted to benefit from the variety and independence and flexibility of just being a highly paid professional in a growing field. So that was most exciting to me. 2, I wanted to develop a deep understanding of people and how they behave in organizations and how I could help make them more productive. And then 3, I wanted to learn how people impact business and how, quite frankly, employees can achieve their full potential while working in an organization. I've worked for many organizations where people just didn't live up to their potential and working at their potential in organizations. So if we go to the next slide, here are some general careers. There are many different careers that business psychologists can get into. I've listed just 6 here, but there are many. Business psychologists, for the most part, are scientist practitioners, and they specialize, like I said, in understanding human behavior in the workplace. So they're experts in various things, such as selection and workforce development and motivation and organizational design. So they could be industrial counselors, such as staff psychologists. They can be human resource executives. I've been in the human resources space for about 20 years. They could be marketing executives, where they're marketing analysts and they analyze big data. They can also be professionals in regards to consultants and being a corporate consultant or a leadership consultant. Also human factors specialists, like people analytics, working for various companies that now do big time people analytics and analyzing people in those organizations. Or they could be good old educators, such as myself, and being a college professor or a university professor. And they can take many various titles in various industries, such as president, vice presidents of private research consulting companies. They could be directors of organizational development and management and training. They could be full associates, associate professors, management consultants, behavioral scientists. Those are all important job titles. And you can see here the various sectors in which they work. So obviously the largest sector here, as you see on the graph, about 46%, is working for big to medium to small organizations, and those can vary. So some of the big companies such as Google and Amazon, Microsoft, SpaceX, they all hire industrial organizational psychologists to come work for them, to work in the various areas I talked about. You also have the big consulting firms such as Accenture and EY and Deloitte, to big banks such as World Bank and Citibank. All of them hire industrial organizational psychologists, business psychologists to come do various types of work in their organization. The second largest here you can see is teaching, so 39%, and that has to do with just the explosion of programs across the world. So about 1,400 programs in various universities. Primarily, most of them are in the US, but you're seeing a lot of research and a lot of universities in Australia and Europe and Canada and Asia, South America. So it's really exploding, and it's continuing to expand very rapidly. And you're seeing various types of degrees, as I mentioned, bachelor's and master's degrees, along with PhDs. So just an explosion of education. You also see here the government. So government such as the Federal Bureau of Investigators of the FBI, Department of Education, Department of Defense, Federal Reserve, the military, NASA, all of those places hire industrial organizational business psychologists. And then you have various nonprofits such as the American Council on Education. They hire business psychologists as well. So you can see we're growing everywhere and growing quickly. So if we go to the next slide, you could get a snapshot of salary. So if we look at the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, we have general numbers on this, and then the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology, they do surveys every year, and they publish data with regard to salary. So you can see it varies from, if you base this on classes as an example, it can range from high working class to at around 84,000 US money to low, middle, and upper class ranges, well over $200,000, depending on what sort of organization you're doing, how you're consulting, how much you're consulting. And you see academia is somewhere in the middle, and also based on your tenure. So if you're a tenured faculty, you tend to make more than non-tenured. So you could get a fair range of where we are. And obviously, if you have a PhD as opposed to a bachelor's degree, obviously you're going to command a higher salary and have more avenues in which to make more streams of income. So you could do various things as a PhD. So it is the highest paid psychological discipline, primarily because we consult the businesses and we could do various things in regards to consulting and teaching and research. So again, multiple streams of income. So the next slide gets into 6 big areas of business psychology, and we'll discuss each of these in depth based on time. But these are the big 6 areas. So first you have employee selection, and business psychologists are helping organizations to develop selection methods. And when we think about tests and structured interviews and biodata, anything to help a person find the right fit for an organization is employee selection. So if we think about valid predictors of a person that we hire and how that can relate to job performance once they start a job based on their particular team environment, that's what business psychology does in regards to making those predictions about how a person will perform in an organization, or how they may relate to the staff, or how they may be a good person organization fit for a company. All of these are around employee selection. And then you have a performance appraisal. So business psychologists have helped organizations to answer the question of how employee performance should be measured and evaluated. So that way we know how people are truly doing in an organization. And then we have training. Training is a $200 billion industry just in the United States. And so it has been a long history of making contributions. Business psychologists have had a long history of making contributions in developing training and development for organizations. So various models of training, and when it comes to various curated content around training, whether the training is working or not. So we also evaluate how training is working, and then consequently how that training can be applied. In other words, how that training is transferable to the job, right? So business psychologists, they do all of that in regards to training. So it's not just taking a course, it's everything associated with taking a course, everything from how you develop that training to actually taking a course to evaluating whether that course works or not. Work motivation, that's huge, right? So if we think about work motivating factors, such as compensation, such as benefits, such as having a good boss, all of these things are motivating factors in organizations. So business psychologists have helped organizations to determine things such as those factors that would be worth it to an employee, right? So what would be important to help an employee stay motivated and continue to be motivated? We also have leadership development, right? So business psychologists work with leaders to help those leaders in their own development, to help them grow and become better leaders. So that way they can continue to keep their people around them and continue to keep them motivated and productive. And then work teams, helping managers prepare for implementation and maintenance of a team-based approach, right? So we seldom ever do work alone. We're generally in a team environment. And so group dynamics and team dynamics are so important to help with moving work along and help getting work done. So these are the broad 6 areas, and I want to jump into each of these to provide a little bit more context, and then I'll turn it over to Kristijan to take over from there. So if we talk about and get into employee selection, this is obviously huge. If we think about the war for talent, in the United States, we have this term war for talent, where we have so many jobs in the United States, but we don't have enough employees to fill those jobs. We don't have enough skilled labor to fill those jobs. And because of that, we have this war for talent, and it's become quite predominant now that we are in COVID, and people are truly trying to find the right organization, the right job, and they're moving around. And so as business psychologists, we have to be able to create this way of attracting talent into the organization, while at the same time making sure we have the best talent to fit the organization. And by doing so, we will improve organizational performance. We will have identified the best applicants to be able to perform at the very highest levels. We would have identified the KSAs, the competencies for this person to fit with that job. And all of that at the same time, we would have been equal in our opportunity for all potential candidates to become an employee. So in other words, we're fair in the way we have selected employees for a particular job. So there are various elements around employee selection, very complex, but we do a lot of testing around that. So we use psychological instruments, we do tests, we do various sorts of competency surveys, leadership development, leadership surveys, any sort of selection tool, and all of that we house under employee selection and selection science. So that in itself is a huge, massive piece of what business psychologists do. If we go on to performance appraisal, so evaluation, if you think about how do we evaluate how people do at their jobs, right? That is performance appraisal. So again, how do we identify the improvement areas based on any sort of assessment that we take for our employees working in the organization? And then consequently, what do we do with that? How do we actually develop the skills they need to continue to perform at a high level? How do we get them the training they need? How do we get them the help that they deserve to continue to sustain this high level of performance? How do we identify the strengths and weaknesses as a worker and then continue to move them along? And then consequently, based on their performance, what are the outcomes? Do we pay them more? Do we give them better benefits? Do we reward them in some way? Do we give them raises and promotions? So all of these things are tied into performance, and you could see how a business psychology would be quite busy in this area. Next slide, please. Training and development. So I talked a bit about this already, but training and development, like I said, is a massive industry of work. And quite frankly, it's a $200 billion industry, like I mentioned, but the evaluation of that training is less than 10%, meaning that we have a lot of training out there, but we don't evaluate whether it's working or not. And that's what business psychologists come in to help with that evaluation piece of training and development. So a lot of great content, but we don't know if it's working. And so business psychologists who come in create assessments for one, whether we need training for a particular aspect of an employee doing a particular job. And then once we give them the training, how do we evaluate whether that training is working? So we use things such as assessments and 360-degree feedback surveys, pre-post evaluations, anything to help evaluate that training and development program, and then look to see, based on observations and, like I said, tests and assessments, whether the employee is actually using that training. So training and development is a very big industry, not well evaluated. And again, that's where business psychologists is helping bridge that gap in regards to training. Work motivation. So how IO psychologists help with motivation. So motivation, there are various motivation theories. They're basically aspects of motivation when it comes to needs and incentives and goals and reinforcers. And really quickly, needs are the basic psychological drivers of why we do things, right? So if you think about going to work, why do you go to work to begin with, right? You want to make money. You want to be able to make money so you could have shelter, so you could have food, right? The basic needs. And if we think about that from a pure basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs standpoint, that is the core purpose of why we work for the most part. The second sort of level here is incentives, so situational factors that motivate us, such as particular rewards we may be after, or any sort of theory around, going to work so we can avoid being poor, as an example, or we may be aspired to achieve a certain level or a certain status. So we think about that as well. We also have reinforcers in organizational settings that play a part, such as paychecks and bonuses and promotions and consequences that lead to favorable behavior in regards to why we work, right? So those are the reinforcers. So all of these are motivating factors that business psychologists study, so that way we could see what is optimal for employees, right? And you look at the big companies that do a lot of this, like Google as an example. My brother works for Google, and they have all different types of packages to help motivate employees. as a quick example, one of the motivating factors right now with COVID is working from home. They've already done studies that show that if we were to bring people back to the office in the United States, about 30% of them would end up quitting because they want to work from home. So working from home is a serious motivator, and that's something that's studied already. So work motivation is huge, and think about that as a future business psychologist and what you can do to motivate people in organizations. The next piece is leadership development. Leadership is a huge construct. There's a lot of research around leadership and the numerous perspectives around the research itself on leadership. But business psychologists have taken it to another level in regards to pulling that research and applying it to organizations. And there are various things that we look at in leaders in organizations. So we have things such as a trait-based approach to leadership. What are the personal attributes that a leader will have, for instance, that would make them a good leader? There are also behavioral traits of a leader, such as what are some of the things that they do to be a good leader in regards to leading the people, being task-oriented, organizing, structuring, being strategic, things of that sort. There's also situational leadership. There's a whole theory around situational leadership, how they should behave based on certain circumstances. And then, of course, there's a cognitive approach to leadership, how they are based on their own disposition, their intelligence, their emotional intelligence, all the pieces. Again, business psychologists measure these things. They study leaders, they help leaders, they coach leaders. I'm an executive coach myself. I help leaders in that regard. So this is also a multi-billion-dollar industry with a lot of executives and coaches and leadership development training out there. The last piece is work teams, and work teams is huge. If we think about the way we do work, as we know it, COVID has changed the way we work, and now the big piece is on virtual work teams, right? Now, whether it's virtual or in person, the dynamics for the most part are the same. And I know Dr. Kristijan is going to talk about more of this in terms of virtual work. So I don't want to steal his thunder, but I do want to talk a little bit about work teams because it is important to understand how we work, right? So it's seldom ever about an individual, even though the United States, as an example, tend to be a very individualistic culture. The reality is we don't work as individuals, we work as a team. So it's really important for us and leaders to understand how to manage teams. You know, so as the slide shows, how do you foster group formation and development? How do you increase team effectiveness and cohesion? How do you get people to work together? How do you create synergy? How do you enhance problem solving and decision making as a group without groupthink and without folks impeding on other people's opinions and things? And then, of course, there's organizational change and organization group dynamics and change processes. And then there's the big piece on organizational development, which was my background. And so there's a lot here in regards to work dynamics. And again, you could just be a consultant working to enhance teams and do team building, which again, it's a very lucrative way to do business psychology. So a couple more pieces I wanted to share with you is, I talked about business psychology being a hot job, but here are some of the hot topics and trends in business psychology that I want to touch on, especially if you get into a program and you're taking business psychology, and you may want to focus on one of these things as well. So first is employment testing. I talked a lot about assessments, right? So creating assessments, psychometrics. That's actually a job. You could become a psychometrician, and you could develop employment testing. You could do psychometrics, develop psychological instruments to help select employees, as an example. So that's a hot topic. It always will be a hot topic. People analytics. It is the #1 job in human resources right now, is becoming a people analytics professional. That's basically taking data and analyzing it and being able to tell a story around the people in an organization. So if you're good with data, if you're good with software, if you're good with analyzing any sort of people data, this could be a really good job for you. And there are vice presidents of people analytics now, so it's a big deal. Trends in technology. So there's so much trends in technology right now. I talked about training and development platforms based on artificial intelligence. I mean, there's just a lot in regards to learning software and compensation software and rewards and recognition software. So if you're big on writing algorithms and codes and doing apps and different things, this could be right for you. There's also performance management, which is the next one there. That will always be big because we need to think about how do we really measure performance in organizations. Employee engagement, that's also big. I talked about working remotely. How do we continue to keep people engaged remote as an example, right? So that's always going to be big. If you look on the right-hand side, we see focus on health and wellness. That is huge in the United States right now. It's the number one growing aspect of business psychology. How do we keep people healthy and well in the workplace? How do we prevent mental anguish and stress and burnout? So that's a big piece. Increased focus on business agility and flexibility. We talk about agile all the time. So agile is big here in the United States and continues to grow in that way. And business psychologists are getting into agile methodology. Work-life balance, again, how do we balance work and life and family, especially across generations? And we're seeing differences in generations. Also building healthy and diverse workforces. I talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion, all really important pieces of what we do as business psychologists. So that is another hot topic. And then virtual and hybrid work that Dr. Kristijan will talk about in a second, but that's also big as well. And then the last slide I have is really some of the publishings that we have in our various journals. Journal of Applied Psychology, Personal Psychology, Journal of Organizational Behavior, Academy of Management Journal, Journal of Management, and then Consulting Psychology. I would encourage you, if you don't know much about business psychology or you're still thinking about whether you should do it, I would encourage you to go find some journals and read about what we do. And you'll be quite interested in learning about the various types of research and where it's been studied and how it's been studied. And so I wish you all the best in terms of making a decision on becoming a future business psychologist. And I will certainly take questions at the end. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Kristijan, for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Marlon. I learned a lot myself. My background is similar, but slightly different. My focus is usually related to international psychology. And I saw a couple of questions about how it can be applied and think about it. How many multinational organizations are there? And what is the communication style? Someone also mentioned communication. There is high context, low context communication. We communicate different way. We relate differently. We have different strategies in how we relay our ideas. So business psychology and international psychology are very interrelated and connected, and hence helpful. One thing that we all know is there is an old proverb that says there are three things certain in life. One of them we already talked about, it's change. The other two are birth and death. So we know that those three are going to happen. And in normal times, organizations are facing numerous uncertainties of varying consequences. Managers deal with challenges by relying on established structures and processes. And we saw that all of that changed quite a bit when COVID happened, because duration and magnitude of a crisis are important determinants of uncertainty. And with COVID, we saw that the longer it lasts, the quicker we would have to come up with different solutions. And depending on severity and relations to those, we would create different solutions as well. And then if we bring in the regional war zones, that extreme uncertainty becomes extremely heightened at the same time. And decision-making is completely different in times when uncertainty is a regular thing, when change is the regular thing, and then when it becomes extremely uncertain. When we are managing an extreme uncertainty, what we need to understand is that existing models that we are operating under, they're failing. They're not working that well because we do not have time to analyze. We have to adjust, and this is what Dr. Marlon was saying, agility. This is where agility comes in, because meticulously crafted plans become too old by the time we need to react to it. We have to be flexible. We have to be able to bend but not break at the same time. And at the same time, we have to have that capability to act collectively, quickly across all organizations and the systems. How do we overcome those challenges? And we're talking about extreme uncertainty, which is going to bring us somehow to the remote work as well. Number one is to plan for worse. We as a business and international psychologists do understand that optimism bias is good. It's very good to be optimistic. However, we have to see what can go wrong to be able to take care of it along the way. We have to be flexible because there is no informational stability, and most likely is unachievable because by the time that information comes to us, it's probably old news at the same time. One of the good things is to understand that we are all humans and we can come up with wrong answers. So to pause and accept that those things are happening is another area in which business and international psychologists can help. And of course, in these extreme uncertainties, paralysis is going to happen by extreme analysis because there is no time to act on what you have. You have to be extremely quick. And Dr. Marlon was talking about organizational health. In time of uncertainty, there is an exhaustion in which people actually stop functioning well. Hence, we have such high percentages of resignations. And I think that Dr. Marlon even talked about it. We are still in the process of great resignations. That is, even in the time where works are opening up, that the jobs are opening up, people resign for a variety of reasons. One of them is burnout and exhaustion. One thing that we can help as individuals who are working with the organization is to activate crisis responses. Those are early warning systems. What do they mean? When do they happen? And when the triggers happen as well. We also have to integrate the nerve centers. Those are the people that we recognize that are authority of proof individuals who can make decisions and who can act in crisis that is happening. In those instances, transparency is extremely critical. And what is important is to understand that a shift from crisis mode to recovery of sustainable operations is more of an evolution than transformation, because we are learning along the way at the same time. This brings us to the issues of remote working. There is quite a difference between attitude with work between the United States and the Europe and then Asia or other continents as well. Northern Europe especially was quite flexible for decades. Even, for example, now when you think about it, they're just ahead of the curve when it comes to working flexibility, because Iceland and Finland have been for the past 20 years in studies to prove that longer working hours do not necessarily mean higher performance. And in Iceland, there is a law that people need to work 4 days a week and they have 3 days off. There is something unimaginable in the United States. So those are differences between continents in that sense. What does it mean to working remotely? It's a work in a place other than employer's office. That can be home, that can be people talk that it's coffee shops with a Wi-Fi or some other areas. However, the majority of people that are working remotely are working from home. There is a lot more nuance to remote working than just this simple definition, as it comes in many different forms and guises. And the number of companies that offer remote working flexibility has grown steadily. And the spectrum definitions goes from fully remote, working from home, workation, telecommuting, digital nomads. In general, there is a need to learn what it means to work flexibly. And what happened during COVID is that suddenly we were thrown into these modes of remote working without people being prepared, because if you work from home, you have suddenly to take care of children or their dogs. There are areas in the house that were not necessarily suitable for work. Then the working hours started being extremely long, and people could not disengage. So that's why this whole hysteria that happened with extreme uncertainty was not always handled well in the situation that happened to all of us in 2020 and 2021. Little by little, that became a norm. However, really differently depending what part of the world you are in. And also it depends on what kind of work you're doing, because not every work is possible to be done from the comfort of your home. What happened, remote work grew significantly. In the 10 years before the pandemic, it grew 91%. 75% of companies plan to permanently shift to more remote work post-COVID. Then 78% of remote workers report greater productivity. People think that by working from home, it's a leisurely time. However, if you're having tasks that you need to do and you have a comfort and flexibility to do it, people actually organize themselves better in that sense. 98% of remote workers want to continue working remotely for the rest of their careers for a variety of reasons. You are not spending too much time in travel. You have flexibility to spend more time with your family. There is some type of work-life balance. And there are a lot of pros that remote work is seen as. And lastly, the 45% of office workers would be willing to quit their jobs for one that allows them to work remotely. So as you can see in these statistics, remote work is something that is coming, that is simply a reality and is happening across the globe. Typical remote working jobs are related to information technology, software engineering, accountancy and financial services, customer services. So you have a lot of these profiles that people can work remotely, and they do not necessarily need to go into the office. Another thing that is highlighted is that benefits for workers. There is a lot of flexibility, work-life balance that I already mentioned. There is control of working environment, and there is a lot of savings of commute costs. Sometimes you, for example, I live in Chicago, and they say that everywhere you need to go, you need an hour. So imagine in an hour, one way, an hour, another way, you're losing 2 hours in commuting in those 2 hours where you can be highly productive. Benefits for employers is that there are reduced operational costs. There is much higher productivity, bigger talent pool. You can actually work with people all over the world who are comfortable and with the work that they need to do, and you can access to that talent. There is lower carbon footprint and there is higher retention at the same time. I wanted to share just a second. I wanted to share a video that our colleague presented, which talks about workplace myths that you should know that were based on research and the studies related to coming from business psychology in general. And we will be curious to hear what you think of it.
I'm sorry, Kristijan, we cannot hear the audio. Is there any sound or audio to the video?
It's just music.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me? Just a second. Can you hear it now?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
So can you hear me? Just nod your head. Yeah.
Yes.
So when talking about the myths that are related to remote work, one is that remote workers don't get as much done, that remote working makes people lonely, and that there are difficulties in communication. Some of these things stand. The difficulties in communication, it's a little bit different when you are communicating remotely. It's a little bit different when you are relating to people. So it takes time to establish those connections when you're working remotely. However, there are ways to offset the pitfalls, like in every new situation, and one can set a work schedule and stick to it. Otherwise, you can actually work 24/7 and without even knowing it when you are from home, because you cannot distinguish which part is my work, which part is my life. To offset feeling lonely, go outdoors frequently, find community outside of work. And then eventually there are going to be some days that we're not going to be completely perfect as well. However, what is critical in working remotely is to set boundaries between work and play. These are all things that are core of the work in business psychology and international psychology in general, in which we are understanding who are we that we are working with, who are the people that we are working with, and what are the best ways to establish those relationships and to communicate with them. What I wanted to see is if we have maybe 5 more minutes to cover another area before question and answers come in. How are we with timing?
Okay, wait, let me check. So it is 11:04 and we have time until, 1 second. We actually have time until 10:55 for the material exposure, but if you want to continue, that's fine. We have
so I will just quickly go over one branch of business psychology that is called behavioral economics, that is dealing with cognition and with biases, something that is related to stereotyping, prejudice, and things such as fundamental attribution error, confirmation bias, etc. So one of the things that we know about behavioral economics is that it deals with biases. And there is some ambiguity regarding the definition of biases and what exactly they mean, as the idea itself intrinsically connected to other concepts. And for the most part, bias is defined as a systemic error, as a deviation from norm or rationality in judgment. Behavioral economics is working with human decision-making, and what relays in that decision-making, what are the instances that are happening when we have to make decisions. And one of our programs in business psychology relates to behavioral economics, in which after completing the program, people are prepared to deliver professional services, perform research, excel as leaders and policy advisors, and be sensitive and inclusive when they are serving diverse population in business, in marketing, and politics. Job titles in related fields can be used to approximate job outlook and related educational needs. And the fields are not limited, but are related to public relations. Someone else already asked about communication in public relations, marketing, education, economics, and consulting in general. These are careers that people can have, and most of them, Dr. Marlon already mentioned, such as public relations, fundraising manager, economist, consultant, and professor at the university, higher institutions, or higher education, or similar. What I would like to show before we go into question and answer is an example of how business psychology works in context. So, for example, when talking about the choice by default, behavioral economics concepts can make a significant difference in organ donation percentages. In an online experiment, some people were told that that the default was not to be an organ donor, and they were given the option of confirming or changing default status. What it means is, when you are getting a driver's license in the United States, you have two options. One is to opt in to become an organ donor, and the other one is to opt out. Now, if you create a situation where you give people option to opt out, people almost all the time leave it as it is and become organ donors. If you give them an option to opt in, they most likely won't do it, and you're decreasing the capacity of people to become part of organ donation. What it means that you created a situation in which you make decisions for people, and you are making them to make those decisions much easier than otherwise they would do it. This is quite applicable in a work setting as well. This is another example of how to make children make healthier food selection in their cafeteria. And the reason is, if you want to ban the junk food or raise the price of unhealthy snacks, or putting junk food on high shelves and healthy food at eye level. What we learn in psychology is that what you see first is most likely leaving the biggest impression in you. So if you leave the food at the eye level of people, they're going to choose that first. So if you put junk food on the top shelves, that's probably going to be avoided. If you put healthy snacks in front of people, they're going to use it. And these studies are showing that when you create situation like that, you are making, again, people make decisions better for themselves. And the last one here that relates to business psychology as well is the understanding of how we see the savings. If, for example, you ask people if they want to save now versus later on in their lives, most likely they're going to avoid the situation where they're going to be saving now, and they're going to say, let's leave that for some later time. We don't want to talk about it. However, if you create a situation where you show individuals a picture of themselves how they're going to look in 40 years from now, most likely they're going to think differently and they're going to adhere to the idea of saving. So all of these things are part of psychology that business psychology understands and implements in different ways and in different systems within organizations. These were quick overviews of how business psychology can be applied in different settings. And we would like to hear questions that you have for us at this point.
All right. Thank you very much, Kristijan. And thank you very much, Marlon, for the very inspiring topic that you have shared with us. So actually, we have several questions here in the Q&A session, in the Q&A feature. And some of them has been answered by Marlon. But Marlon, if you want to add something here, feel free to add as well, yeah? So I will actually read the first question. Hi, Professor Marlon and Professor Kristijan. Thanks for inspiring us. In terms of the application in job, can we apply this business psychology in communication areas such as public relation? Probably Kristijan or Marlon, you would like to?
Yeah, so I answer that. You could absolutely apply it to any area in organizations in general. Specifically, if you're thinking about communication or public relations, if there was a particular department, keeping in mind work in any sort of context, business psychology principles can be applied. So that's the universality of business psychology. And some of the follow-up questions kind of answers along the same line.
Another thing that I can actually add as well here is, this was like a study that was happening. There was a giraffe on a football field, and the individuals were asked, Anglo-Americans and Asian Americans, who can recognize the giraffe on the football field. And over again, Anglo-Americans were much faster in recognizing giraffe on a football field, and they were trying to figure out why is this the case. One of the things was Asian Americans were saying, what the heck is giraffe doing on a football field? They couldn't understand because giraffe should not be on a football field. This brings us back to the styles of communication that are across the globe. You have a high and low context communication. Low context communication does not focus on how you present the case, on how you look on social cues. It's all about the words. Why high context communication is about human relationship. It's about the cues. It's not necessarily what people say, but how people say. And typically what we learn is that high communication styles are related to highly collectivistic cultures, and that can be Eastern Europe, that can be Asia, that can be Africa, while low communication style is related to the Western countries, such as North America, Western Europe. Once you learn how these communication styles are functioning, you actually are opening communications and have much better style in communication. So this is 2 cents about how communication can be applied.
Okay, thank you very much, Marlon and Kristijan, for the answer. So before we move on to the next question, I would like to let our participants know that there will be MAP voucher worth of 1 million rupiah for the most interesting questions. So if you guys want to win the MAP voucher, feel free to ask questions or have discussions with our speakers. So we already have 5 questions here in the Q&A. So for those who ask questions in the Q&A, please send your name, number, and also email, as well as your address in the chat box, so that our operator will be able to note down on your names and we'll be able to send the voucher to you guys. Okay, so on to the next question from Fiani. So this question has been answered by Marlon. Probably Kristijan would like to add something. So I would like to ask about that you have been mentioning US statistics in business psychology really benefit businesses. But what about in Indonesia or Asia in general? Is business psychology is needed as it is in the US? Thank you.
Yeah, and I answered this in the presentation as well, that business psychology is needed everywhere. So everywhere people work, business psychologists are needed. And because of that, you know, that realization has taken hold globally. And you're seeing that. Yeah, if you look at research coming out of Asia, there's quite a bit. Many organizations now, and you're seeing jobs out there specifically around industrial organizational psychologists, business psychologists, doing more work overseas, whether in a consulting capacity or working for large global types of organizations. And that's, at least from what I see, driven by tech companies that are pretty predominant internationally. So you look at you know, the Googles and the Amazons and the big multinational banks. They're hiring IO psychologists as well. So that this field has become, or is becoming, quite pervasive, and that's the reason why it's growing, and also the reason why we're seeing research in various areas, as well as all different types of degrees popping up at various universities.
Yes, I can only concur with Dr. Marlon, just because multinational companies are now spreading all over the world, and there are different styles of functioning, and most of the organizations look alike at the same time. So what we can provide in the US, it is very similar what we can provide in some other countries as well. We had, I remember we were having a webinar about motivational interviewing, and half of our colleagues were from Asia, it really is a growing field, and it's extremely helpful because as Marlon was talking about, there is work ethics, there is working with teams, there is professional development, leadership development, what style works in what setting, what does context mean in the United States, what is context in Asia. So I hope that it makes sense why business psychology is needed in other places than the US, because we certainly are not the only one who have business psychology as a concept.
Okay, right. So as Dr. Marlon has already mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we're probably familiar with the term industrial organizational psychology, or psikologi industri dan organisasi in Indonesia, yeah? And it is actually the same as business psychology. Am I right, Kristijan and Marlon? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you very much. So the next question is, how can business psychology improve the accounting or finance department? Probably. Yeah. Sure.
No. Please tell me. Think about it. I would like to talk to this individual. So, what are the structures of finance department? So, what exists in a department of finance? If this person can tell me that, because there lies the answer, right? There are people create organizations, and as industrial organizational psychologist, you are working with people. So even if accounting finance department has numbers, they still have to learn how to communicate. They have to learn how to hire. They have to learn how to create the working environment in where people are going to be comfortable. Only from that aspect, business psychologists can improve relationships. Let's say, what did Marlon say?
Yeah, so Vina, that's a really good question. And if you remember that the 6 broad buckets of what business psychologists do, which are selection, training, performance, motivation, teamwork, and leadership. If we take those 6 pieces, we could apply that to any organization. So if we're thinking about your accounting finance department, if I were a consultant going in there, I would evaluate things such as, how is your leadership in your department? How are your employees performing? How is the teamwork? How are your people motivated? And based on those evaluations, then I would do interventions such as leadership development or training or helping with their motivation or helping with team building. So that's how you can continue to improve. And that's, again, universal to every department, any organization. And that's what we as business psychologists do. We go in and evaluate the situation. We look to see what are some of the things that are working well and what are some of the things we can improve upon. And then we act on that by particular interventions. And then we follow up and see how things are going and evaluate whether it's improving. And that's consulting. That's what we do.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question comes from Calbis student, actually. So how is the possibility of a business psychologist can be a top executive? Thank you. This is probably has been answered by Marlon in the chat. So probably if Kristijan would like to add, or Marlon.
Yeah. No, oh, absolutely. Think about it. As a business psychologist, you understand that the organizations are not necessarily just task-oriented, but they are people-oriented as well. So as a business psychologist, you understand what relationships mean, what it means to be part of the team, and what it means to lead and inspire the team. By just, not only understanding, by living that type of style, you actually can move up the ladder in any institution because you understand what is needed and how it's needed. One thing that that is very typical in corporate world is that people understand how others are functioning, but what they need to learn and what we as psychologists are helping them is how they are understanding themselves. So it's the moment of self-awareness in which business psychologists by default should be quite developed in that sense. So I see it from that standpoint, how one can, if that is the question, if I'm understanding the question quite well, how business psychologists can be a top executive.
I would also add business psychologists and going into industry, after they've graduated and working in organizations, they've certainly elevated what they have done, and they've shown their value in what they've done. And because of that, that's how that's rewarded. And so if you go on Indeed or you go on LinkedIn and you look to see these types of jobs that are out there, they're at the very highest levels of, I've seen vice presidents of organizational development or vice presidents of human resources or vice presidents of training and development, of leadership development. So they, these jobs of business psychologists have become so important to the organization that they have to elevate those roles. And because of that, they've not only just elevated to these particular levels, but they also have a full staff around those folks. I remember reading about the history of Google and the people analytics department. They started with one business psychologist, and now that's grown into a team of business psychologists working for Google. So again, showing the value of the organization. And that's what I would tell students, even if you enter an organization and there's no other business psychologist in there, just kind of bloom where you're planted. You go in, you show the value of what you can do, and you could grow an entire department and show the value in the good work that we're doing. So I've seen it happen, and it continues to happen.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question comes from Yash Ramasaputra. So the question is, regarding the remote working, how best do you motivate and engage people who are working remotely to form bonds and friendship with their coworkers in an organization?
So this is really a great question, because that is a challenge in general when you are separated from individuals that you're working with. First of all, it's good to present oneself to your colleagues it's very hard to establish those connections remotely. However, if you show your face on a camera, if you text your colleague, if you have those situations in which you are seeking those connections, those things are possible. One thing that I can say is that it takes a little bit longer to establish relationships when you are strictly working remotely, but those things are not impossible, because typically you're going to work on some project. In those projects, you're going to be depending one on another, and in that way, you're going to be learning the same way you will be learning face-to-face, who to trust more, who is not someone to work with, or who is not the most comfortable person to work with. So in that sense, things become very, very similar as face-to-face as well. I don't know what Dr. Marlon would say.
Yeah, and I would also add, technology is a wonderful thing. The way Zoom has developed as an example, and WebEx, and all these different platforms. I was looking at how it's going to continue to evolve, where it could be even more interactive than how it is now. So that the technology is certainly catching up with what we're asking it to do, which is how do we, to this very question, how do we continue to build relationships? How do we continue to have water cooler talks? How do we continue to be a unified group, even though we're in different geographic locations? And the way we do that is through technology.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. So on to the next question. What is psychology? What benefits and how does it apply? So this is basically psychology in general, yeah, not business psychology, based on the question, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very broad question. What is psychology? Mm-hmm. Psychology in general is a scientific study of mind and behavior, and it includes the study of conscious and unconscious phenomena, and it includes feelings and thoughts. And I think Buddy was talking about emotional intelligence, of how you relate to people, how you communicate to people, what are your social skills. So it's such a wide branch of things that are related to affection, to cognition, to behavior. And you have also different branches where you're talking about counseling, where you're talking about business psychology, when you're talking about applied behavioral psychology. I mean, there are zillions of little things that are related to psychology. What benefits? With benefits that you understand what is behind human behavior, why the human behavior is as it is, and how to facilitate relationship and communication in that sense. And I mean, this is just such a broad answer to what psychology is and how does it apply. What would you say, Dr. Marlon?
Yeah, and I would say, in terms of the branches, I want to touch on that. If you go to the American Psychological Association, you'll see all the different branches of psychology that are out there. If you've ever been to a conference on general psychology, you'll see that every psychological discipline has their own sort of booths: the business psychologist, the clinical psychologist, experimental psychologist, social psychologist. They all have their own, these are all their own disciplines. So, if you're really looking to see what you get into, really explore a few of those. I mean, as an example, when I was exploring graduate programs, I was looking at clinical, social, and business psychology. And those are the three I was toggling between in regards to what I wanted to go to school for. And I ended up doing business psychology because to me, it made the most sense. It resonated with me. I saw it as a way to make money later on in my career. I saw it as a way to do good work in organizations. So there's a psychology discipline for everyone, I say. And so you should really explore all of it.
Okay, thank you very much for the question, for the answer. And to the next question, it is from Yolanda. So by applying business psychology, how can it foster healthy behavior in an organization? And can we use some of the method to be applied, especially in our student organization or council?
Yeah, I would say, again, this goes back to my answer. It applies everywhere. And that would include your student organization or your council. Think about it. You know, when you come together as a group in a student organization or council, you have all the things that I talked about, right? You have leadership, you have performance, you have motivation, you have teamwork, you know, all of the things that, those buckets that I presented to you, that would be applied to any sort of organization, whether it's a student organization, private organization, public organization, nonprofit organization, a council. It's all about people coming together to do a particular job or to do a particular function. And that's why, again, business psychology is universal in its modality because it applies in that sense. So again, you know, take everything that we've mentioned today, and you can see how it easily applies to your council and your student-run organization.
Yeah,
Dr.
I mean,
Kristijan?
I even had an experience as a student as well. I was part of Ambassadors Club, in which we were part of we were a group of 5, and we were liaisons between the students and faculty. We would have to meet on monthly basis. In those meetings, we would discuss what the issues were, how we're going to present those cases to people above us, how are we going to make sure that what we were told from students was quite confidential, and then how we relay that information to people who were in the positions of power to make those changes. And in that process, you learn to create relationships, you are networking. It's literally leadership development, and how you as a leader can see yourself at that moment and in the future. So my experience as a student was quite beneficial from understanding how relationships are fostered and how the systems function. To this day, though, I am very bad in writing minutes of any meeting. That's not something that I ever learned, and that's not something I would want to learn. But yeah, that's another good thing. I know my strengths and weaknesses, and that's part of business psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the next question is from Fanny. Is business psychology can be used to boost the morale of employees? Thank you, Dr. Sukal and Dr. Civljak.
Absolutely. One thing that is recognized is that optimism boosts morale of employees. Optimism is also related to emotional intelligence. So the positive outlook on life actually is, how would you say that, is infectious. So if you see the half full glass all the time, your employees are going to pick on that and going to also react that way. What we need to understand as business psychologists in general is that we don't have to say things for things to be understood. We understand what other people are thinking, and in order to boost morale, you have to inspire. Because if and studies show that as well, if there is only compliance, there is no long-term benefit, neither for the organization, nor for the group, nor for the employees. So optimism is proven to be a booster in relationships.
Okay, so we also have another questions from Daniel. So I'm Daniel Intan Rahmawati. How much influence does business psychology have on our career in finance?
You mean as a career choice?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not clear on that question.
Probably Daniel, Intan, you can add more.
So yep. What I can try to, let's say that I can try to think about is in business psychologist also helps you understand how business work and how different hierarchies and systems within organizations work. And it also recognizes what are important qualities that one need to pursue in order to move from one place to another and how to navigate all of those. So if you're thinking if in that way, it can really help you because it guides you, it understands, because it starts with understanding what your values are as an individual, and then recognizing what those values are in the organizations you're working with. Then it also can help you understand what is the mission, what is it that you want to achieve in your life individually, and then finding the place that is going to facilitate that upward mobility or any type of career that you want to. In finance specifically, I think that that would not necessarily be so much different than a career in some other field as well. But from that perspective, business psychology can definitely help at least navigating through those loops.
All right, thank you very much. The next question is from Alifa. So with respect to business psychologists, what do you think about what should one with a business psychologist degree should be most responsible for in a profit-oriented organization?
And so this ties into when I talked about the various job titles. Again, there are so many different elements of business psychology, and again, I'll stick to the 6 areas that I talked about, which was employee selection, and then performance appraisal, training and development, work motivation, leadership, and then working in teams. Again, 6 big areas. And they could really specialize in any one of those. For instance, you could be a senior vice president of learning and development for a for-profit organization, as an example, right? Again, training is a big business. You could be a vice president for selection and recruiting for your organization. So again, it's once you get into business psychology, you get a feel and a taste for all of it, right? So when I entered my graduate program, I studied in each of my classes all of these different aspects of business psychology, and then I was able to pick and choose which I really liked, and then focused on that once I graduated and started my career. So it's the same thing, as you get into graduate school, is to really, one, learn it first, and then see what you would like to continue to do after graduation.
Okay, so the next question comes from Miss Beth. So she's actually from Department of International Business Management, and she is from I3L, our sister company. So Miss Beth asked question, more often, misunderstanding or miscommunication occurs when 2 people come from work orientation, like a pilot or a doctor whose job must definitely be 100% exact in all ways. And that maybe makes them perfectionists somehow. And an academician whose work oriented is a contextual learning approach, not always exact, but once the context is understood, then you don't necessarily fail students because you understood what they mean anyways. In this case, how do you reconcile the differences? Is that always right to say, let us agree to disagree?
I mean, we can always say, let us agree to disagree, but the question is if we really disagree or we are talking past one another in general. One thing that I've learned is that this applies to everyone, myself included as well, we really need to learn to listen. And reflective listening is something that will bring people to the point to understand that maybe they don't even disagree. What it means is that someone is telling me a story and I should not be in a situation to respond with a solution for that story. Actually, what I need to hear is what is part of that story that I can actually be part as well of it as well. So I would not necessarily say that misunderstanding, miscommunication is happening because of disagreement. It's happening because people are not listening one another. So one of the ways to do it is to learn to listen and to ask right questions. This is a great question to start with already, because someone is asking, we are responding, we are acknowledging how good that question is, and we are moving conversation, and eventually we might even find out that we agree upon things.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, especially in the United States, where we tend to argue about all sorts of things. One really good example is American politics. And quite frankly, people have their own biases. So we, as business psychologists, study quite a bit about bias and how that impacts the message and how that impacts communication and how receptive you will be for a particular message because you have your own bias that's blocking communication. And so we learn about how do you overcome biases, how do you deal with biases, how do you get your message across, while at the same time you talk about ideas of persuasion and different pieces of communication. So there's a lot there, again, all psychological in its approach, but again, it all ties in with communication.
All right, thank you very much, Marlon and Kristijan. Do you mind if we add one more question to answer?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. So we have one question from our, she's actually from Senior High School in Kuta, Bali. So the question is, if we only have knowledge and skills related to business psychology, will we be able to build a business and develop it? Thank you.
So business psychology knowledge is quite wide, right? So it's not narrow. So you're learning how to build a business. You're learning finances related to it. You are learning about human relationship. You're learning about task management. So there is a variety of different skills that are developed, which are quite typical for any entrepreneurship or for any business that one can engage in. So when talking about only business psychology, we're talking about a lot of different things that one is acquiring throughout the process of learning about the business and psychological aspects of it.
Yeah, it's also the program you're in too. So our program at the Chicago School is an example. We teach business courses as part of the program. So in the PhD business psychology program, as an example, for the master's, we have courses such as business principles. We have a course on building your own consulting practice. So we're basically helping you develop a business plan. So that way, when you graduate, you could actually go out and start your own consulting practice, or at least learn about business principles so you could be a part of a partnership or a sole proprietorship or a LLC or a corporation. So we teach you these things as part of the program.
Okay, thank you very much for the answers, Kristijan and Marlon. So, all right, that was the last question that we have for our speakers. We actually still have many questions here unanswered, but because we are kind of short in time, probably can have more discussions outside this room, yeah, or probably at another time.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think that we've done it as well, but one of the things that we can do is to leave our emails where people can actually contact us and ask questions or interact with us if we did not manage to answer. Let me see if I actually spelled it correctly. Civljak@chicagoschool.edu. So that's one good way to stay in contact or ask questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Kristijan. And if you guys would like to ask questions or stay in contact with Kristijan or probably with Marlon, feel free to send them emails to the emails that they have sent in the chat box. Thank you very much. All right, so before we end the session, I would like also to say hello to Ms. Reni Mutiarani Saraswati. She is the Head of Business and Entrepreneurship from I3L. And also Ms. Elizabeth Furio Perez. She is the Department of International Business Management from I3L as well. I3L is Indonesia International Institute for Life Sciences. Basically, I3L is our sister company. So before we close the Q&A session, we would like to take pictures with all the speakers. Operator, would you please help us taking the picture?
Okay, please, everyone ready? In 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we will continue the session with the information session from Kalbis Institute. So Kristijan and Marlon, if you wish to join the session, feel free to join us. But if you have things to do outside this room, feel free. Yeah. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for the materials that you have shared with us. It is very helpful, it is very insightful, and it opens our mind more about business psychology. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Sukal and Dr. Civljak.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon.
Have a great one.
You too, thanks. Okay, so next, let's hear further information about management in business psychology stream at Kalbis Institute from our representative. We have Bapak Robi Sutrisna here. Feel free to use Indonesian if you want, or feel free to use English if you wish to, Pak Robi. So the time is yours.
Thank you. Okay, maybe I will use the Indonesians for the presentation of Kalbis Institute. So, selamat siang semuanya, teman-teman semuanya yang ada di sini. Mungkin ada Bapak Ibu guru yang kita undang ke sini juga. Terima kasih banyak atas waktunya. Mungkin buat dari teman-teman Kalbiser juga selamat siang semuanya. Ya, jadi kalau misalnya memang teman-teman dari teman-teman sendiri memang tertarik gitu ya mengenai apa sih bisnis psikologi, memang lebih mendalam lagi gitu. Jadi memang teman-teman nanti juga bisa join bersama Kalbis Institute. Nah, mungkin bertanya-tanya gitu ya, kita ada sempat memberikan informasi mengenai undangan invitations gitu ya, mengenai webinar bisnis psikologi. Oh, ternyata ada gitu ya, karena memang setahu saya ini memang baru satu-satunya pertama di Indonesia memang lebih ke bisnis psikologinya secara langsung, teman-teman dan Bapak Ibu semuanya ya. Jadi kalau misalkan memang teman-teman di sini itu ada yang memang tertarik, mungkin bisa stay tune dulu sebentar. Saya pengen memberikan informasi mengenai apa sih Kalbis secara keseluruhan dan memang apa sih memang kita bisa deliver buat teman-teman gitu ya, nanti saat teman-teman nanti memilih perkuliahan atau enggak mungkin nanti juga buat teman-teman yang pengen lebih spesifik lagi ke dunia bisnis psikologinya gitu. Nah, perkenalkan dulu, nama saya Robi, saya perwakilan dari Departemen Student Recruitment dan juga Admission di Kalbis Institute, teman-teman dan Bapak Ibu. Jadi mau memberikan sekilas sedikit tentang Kalbis itu seperti apa gitu ya. Mungkin tadi saya mengulang, teman-teman mungkin atau Bapak Ibu bertanya-tanya kok ada undangan dari Kalbis gitu ya. Mungkin ada beberapa yang belum tahu tentang Kalbis, mungkin ada beberapa juga yang sudah tahu tentang Kalbis tapi memang baru sedikit gitu ya. Atau enggak mungkin di sini yang sudah jadi Kalbiser itu mungkin bisa direkomendasikan saudaranya, teman-temannya, sepupunya, dan lainnya itu memang bisa masuk ke Kalbis Institute. Itu ya, karena memang kita sangat mempersiapkan teman-teman di sini itu untuk bisa berkompetisi di dunia industrial. Nah, Kalbis Institute memang salah satu perguruan tinggi swasta yang bergerak di bidang pendidikan tentunya teman-teman. Ya, kita offer adalah untuk jenjang S1 dan juga S2. Jadi buat para Kalbiser yang ada di sini, itu juga bisa untuk lanjutin program MM-nya di Kalbis Institute gitu ya. Atau nggak misalkan yang masih bingung pilih kampus, either kelas 10, kelas 11, atau kelas 12. Kelas 12 tentunya ya, yang sudah mulai agak cukup mepet waktunya, itu sudah bisa set di Kalbis Institute ya dari sekarang. Nah, ini Kalbis Institute, kita salah satu perguruan tinggi yang bergerak di bidang pendidikan, yang dimana kami itu langsung di bawah Yayasan Pendidikan Kalbe, teman-teman, yang punya tagline cukup berbeda dibanding kampus lain. Kita punya tagline namanya Transforming Hearts and Minds, yang ini akan membedakan teman-teman dengan robot gitu ya. Karena nanti tantangan-tantangan yang teman-teman akan hadapi itu akan jauh lebih tough, teman-teman. Mungkin zamannya saya, zamannya Kak Vera gitu ya, dan juga zaman kakak atau saudaranya teman-teman yang sudah berkuliah atau sedang bekerja saat ini. Nah, Kalbis Institute memang salah satu perguruan tinggi yang memang cukup berbeda konsepnya dibandingkan kampus lain yang to be honest bisa dibilang salah satu yang lebih eksklusif teman-teman di Indonesia, yang dimana Kalbis Institute itu memang dilatar belakangi oleh salah satu perusahaan yang bukan hanya cukup besar atau besar aja, tapi sangat besar teman-teman yang ada di Indonesia, yaitu adalah perusahaan dari Kalbe Group, teman-teman ya. Yang dimana Kalbe ini salah satu yang paling besarnya itulah di pharmaceutical-nya. So, Kalbe itu adalah the largest pharmaceutical company in Southeast Asia. Not only in Indonesia, but in Southeast Asia, teman-teman. Teman-teman bisa bayangin. Dan biasanya, kalau saya bertemu dengan beberapa perusahaan industrial, atau enggak mungkin beberapa rekanan dari yayasan sekolah gitu, atau enggak orang tua murid, teman-teman bertanya adalah, kenapa kok Kalbe bikin kampus? Pertanyaannya, jawabannya simple, itu kebutuhan, teman-teman. Ya, nah, pertanyaan selanjutnya adalah kenapa kok kebutuhan, Kak? Sedangkan kalau kebutuhan kan bisa ngambil dari beberapa perguruan tinggi swasta atau negeri yang ada di Indonesia. Kenapa kok nggak maksimis yang ada di situ? Jawabannya simple, teman-teman, yaitu adalah standarisasi. Ya, jadi ini adalah salah satu alasan kenapa Kalbe ini membuat kampus Kalbe Institute, yaitu adalah untuk memperkecil gap, teman-teman. Ya, nah, gapnya apa? Jadi based on dari experience-nya Kalbe itu berdiri sekitar 50-60 tahun, teman-teman, ada gap cukup besar yang mereka hadapi. Mungkin bukan sebatas Kalbe aja yang hadapi, tapi hampir semua perusahaan yang ada di Indonesia, bahkan seluruh dunia, teman-teman. Ya, terkhususnya kita fokusnya di Indonesia. Jadi ada gap cukup besar antara kualitas pendidikannya kita atau kualitas lulusannya kita dan juga dari segi standarisasi perusahaan, teman-teman. Ya, teman-teman bisa bayangin gap-nya cukup besar. Wah, berarti pendidikan Indonesia jelek dong, Kak? Enggak, teman-teman. Semuanya bagus. Tapi terkadang sistem pembelajaran di Indonesia itu memang kita belum bisa mengikuti kecepatan atau kedinamisan dunia industrial. Ya, dunia industri itu sangat-sangat dinamis, teman-teman. Ya, sangat-sangat cepat sekali. Mau nggak mau, dari segi teman-teman atau kampus itu harus mengikuti tren tersebut, gitu ya. Nggak boleh sampai teman-teman ketinggalan. Karena kalau teman-teman ketinggalan, teman-teman akan underqualified, teman-teman. Ya. Nah, Kalbis Institute juga kita bisa dibilang salah satu perguruan tinggi yang sudah lama di Indonesia, ya. Mungkin yang sudah jadi Kalbiser juga gitu ya, sebutan untuk mahasiswa-mahasiswa Kalbis juga mungkin baru tahu gitu, oh ternyata dari tahun 92 gitu kan. Nah, jadi kita itu memang sudah dari tahun 92, tahun ini adalah tahun ke-30-nya kami yang ada di Indonesia untuk improve quality of education yang ada di Indonesia, teman-teman. Dengan unique selling point, kita lebih karena ke work ready, international exposures, innovation program, ya salah satunya adalah hari ini kita punya narasumber yang sangat luar biasa, teman-teman, ya. Jadi mau ketemu dengan beliau itu sulit sekali, teman-teman, tapi beliau itu sangat luar biasa komitmennya juga dengan Kalbis Institute untuk mendeliver dan juga untuk memberikan informasi mengenai pentingnya bisnis psikologi bukan hanya di Indonesia saja tapi juga sampai penjuru dunia, teman-teman. Ya, jadi di sini Kalbis Institute adalah kampus yang memang kita mempersiapkan buat teman-teman itu bisa berkompetisi di dunia industrial. Ya, nah ini adalah konsep yang Kalbis Institute berikan. Jadi dengan corporate based university by Kalbe, ya, jadi kita punya dua metode pembelajaran, yaitu adalah practical project based dan juga practical learning, yang dimana kita punya beberapa departemen yang menunjang atau mensupport teman-teman dalam perkuliahan, supaya nanti teman-teman punya soft skill dan juga hard skill yang mumpuni, supaya teman-teman juga nanti saat terjun di dunia industrial, teman-teman sudah work ready atau nggak siap buat bekerja, gitu ya. Yang pertama, kita punya next center, itu untuk inkubator bisnis, ada international office, ada alumni karir dan juga departemen. Ya, ibaratnya ini sudah menjadi pondasi-pondasi yang kuat untuk menunjang teman-teman nanti terjun di dunia industri. Jadi kita sudah mempersiapkan dari segi metodenya, dari segi departemennya, dari segi skillnya, dari segi dosen-dosennya kita mempersiapkan supaya teman-teman poinnya adalah work readiness, teman-teman. Ya, lalu ini adalah penghargaannya. Jadi kalau teman-teman melihat dari Kalbis Institute ini memang kita salah satu perguruan tinggi yang memang tidak terlalu besar. Tapi dari segi kualitas kita sangat besar, teman-teman. Kenapa? Karena dari segi kemahasiswaan, atau kalau kampus dan pengembangan dosen kita bisa dibilang sangat baik. That's why kita mendapatkan penghargaan sebagai institut terbaik kedua se-DKI Jakarta sejak 2016, teman-teman. Dan puji Tuhan, alhamdulillah juga sampai detik ini kita zero case narkoba, teman-teman. Ya, makanya kita mendapatkan penghargaan sebagai satu-satunya atau salah satu kampus penggiat anti narkoba yang ada di Indonesia. Ya, dan tahun kemarin kita baru dapat penghargaan lagi 50 perguruan tinggi swasta terbaik ya di tahun 2020 di wilayah LHDikti wilayah 3, yaitu adalah wilayah DKI dan sekitarnya, teman-teman. Ya, poinnya adalah kalau misalkan teman-teman sudah berjoin atau akan berjoin di Kalbis Institute, ya, itu patut bangga. Kenapa? Karena sudah menjadi atau akan menjadi salah satu mahasiswa atau mahasiswi di salah satu perguruan tinggi swasta terbaik yang ada di Indonesia, teman-teman. Ya. Dan ujung-ujungnya adalah di sini. Poin utamanya ini adalah data yang kita bisa pertanggungjawabkan. 80% lulusan Kalbis sudah bekerja sebelum diwisuda dan 1 dari 4 lulusan Kalbis bekerja di perusahaan internasional, teman-teman. Ya, hopefully dengan bantuan Kalbiser yang ada sekarang atau enggak teman-teman yang ada sekarang yang akan join ke Kalbis Institute gitu ya, atau akan nanti ke depan join di Kalbis Institute, 80% ini kita bisa bareng-bareng increase menjadi 85 atau 90, ya. 1 dari 4 ini kita akan increase menjadi 1 dari 3 atau bahkan dari 2, teman-teman. Dan saya bisa dibilang sangat luar biasa optimis dengan hal ini. Kenapa? Karena memang apa yang kita berikan atau yang kita deliver itu sudah sesuai dengan apa yang nanti industrial butuhkan, teman-teman. Ya. Dan untuk fakultasnya, jadi teman-teman di sini juga kita hanya ada beberapa fakultas, hanya ada 2 fakultas dengan 6 jurusan. Ya, untuk 6 jurusan S1 dan juga 1 jurusan untuk S2, yaitu adalah Magister of Management. Ya, kalau teman-teman melihat di sini, cukup berbedanya itu adalah kita persiapkan teman-teman itu di streamingnya. Ya. Salah satu yang kita berikan saat ini adalah materinya mengenai Management in Business Psychology, yang mungkin teman-teman juga cukup heran, oh ternyata ada bisnis psikologi di Indonesia. Bahkan mungkin baru tahu gitu ya, ada ilmunya ternyata. Ada, teman-teman, ya. Jadi ini yang kita persiapkan untuk teman-teman bukannya sebatas di dunia industrial di Indonesia saja, tapi juga sampai ke luar negeri. Ya, karena bisa dibilang kebutuhan teman-teman yang teman-teman nanti akan hadapi, itu kebutuhannya itu akan lebih spesifik, teman-teman. Ya, zaman dulu mungkin lebih karena hanya manajemen, accounting, ilkom, IT, SI, DKV sudah cukup, gitu ya. Tapi sekarang perusahaan-perusahaan, apalagi perusahaan-perusahaan besar, mereka sudah pengen spesifik, teman-teman. Ya, kalau teman-teman pengen lebih ke digital marketing, teman-teman harus punya streaming atau enggak punya peminatan atau punya kompetensi di bidang digital marketing khusus, teman-teman. Ya, dan ini adalah fakultas dan juga jurusan dan juga streaming yang kita punya. Salah satunya kita punya manajemen business psychology juga, gitu ya. Informatinya kita punya AI, kita punya cyber security, kita punya virtual reality, dan di DKV-nya kita ilustrasi, animasi, graphic design. Ya, poin utamanya adalah memang kita mempersiapkan untuk high demand per supply-nya, teman-teman. Ya, jadi kalau teman-teman lihat di sini, demand-nya luar biasa, tapi dari segi supply, bukan supply quantity ya teman-teman ya, tapi dari segi supply quality. Ya, kalau teman-teman lihat di sini, setiap tahun mungkin di Indonesia itu sudah meluluskan berapa orang sih manajemen, berapa orang sih yang meluluskan sarjana ilmu komunikasi di Indonesia, sangat banyak. Kita juga aware akan hal itu. Tapi apa yang kita berikan di sini dari segi kualitasnya, ya, yang kita berikan buat industrial bukan hanya sebatas di quantity, teman-teman. Bukan hanya sebatas di quantity atau jumlah yang kita luluskan. Tapi kita juga memberikan kualitas yang sangat luar biasa supaya apa? Supaya tujuan utamanya teman-teman bisa punya kompetensi atau daya saing tambahan dibandingkan teman-teman lain di luar KBIS Institute. Gitu ya. Nah, itu adalah jurusannya. Saya langsung next saja. Ini adalah salah satu program yang memang internalisasinya, teman-teman. Kita baru-baru ini diajak kerjasama dan cukup banyak, sudah banyak beberapa kampus yang pengen kerjasama dengan kita. Ya, ini salah satunya kita ada kerjasama dengan BHMS Switzerland juga. Untuk KBIS internasionalnya, ini memang full bahasa Inggris dan semuanya memang internasional. Ya, dan ini adalah salah satu informasi yang memang saya bisa coba berikan buat teman-teman yang berbeda. Ya, mungkin saya berani bilang di sini, teman-teman, based on dari pengalaman saya sekitar 10 tahun di bidang pendidikan, gitu ya. Jadi, KBIS Institute adalah satu-satunya kampus, saya mungkin bisa tekanin lagi, KBIS Institute the one and only, teman-teman boleh cek dari Sabang sampai Merauke, perguruan tinggi negeri atau perguruan tinggi swasta, ya teman-teman boleh cek, KBIS Institute adalah satu-satunya kampus yang membundling program antara gelar sertifikasi sarjana, ya atau S1 dan juga industrial certification secara langsung. Ya, kalau di tempat lain memang biasa gimana, Kak? Kalau di tempat lain biasanya itu teman-teman sifatnya optional. Ya, memang baru 2 tahun belakangan ini buat kalbiser yang memang sebelum 2 tahun belakangan ini gitu ya, kalbiser yang lain bisa coba kontak bagian internal office untuk coba ikut yang sertifikasi program kompetensinya, teman-teman. Ya, nah tapi kalau misalkan memang belum masuk, teman-teman boleh cek. Kalau di tempat lain dia sifatnya optional, teman-teman boleh ambil, tapi teman-teman harus bayar lagi dan kuliah lagi. Ya, get the point ya. Jadi memang harus bayar lagi dan harus kuliah lagi. Dan sertifikasinya itu berdasarkan kompetensi-kompetensi yang teman-teman ambil. Dan kompetensi atau sertifikasinya itu berdasarkan institusi-institusi yang memang bergerak di bidang tersebut, teman-teman. Contohnya adalah kalau misalkan teman-teman ambil Business Psychology, ya teman-teman juga bisa dapetin dari Chicago School of Business Psychology tadi, atau kita juga ada kerjasama juga dengan ABP. Ya. Kalau teman-teman ambil DKV, teman-teman akan mendapatkan gelar sarjana desain ditambah Adobe Certifications atau enggak Brandon Field Studio Certifications. Kalau teman-teman ambil IT, akan mendapatkan Google Certifications, IBM Certification, atau SIA Global Security Certifications. Kalau ambil accounting, bisa juga mendapatkan gelar sarjana accounting ditambah ACCA Diploma Certification dari UK. Ya, teman-teman boleh searching karena waktunya terbatas gitu ya. Kalau saya jelasin mengenai sertifikasi ini mungkin 2 jam 3 jam nggak cukup. gitu ya, karena memang banyak banget yang perlu diinformasikan gitu ya. Ini adalah dari segi internalisasinya teman-teman. Ya, jadi sudah banyak sekali kerjasama perusahaan, kampus, atau enggak sertifikasi yang kita bisa berikan buat teman-teman untuk teman-teman nanti melanjuti ke dalam negeri atau ke luar negeri. Itu banyak sekali. Jadi untuk international exposure-nya. Ini untuk kolaborasi industrinya, itu juga sudah sangat banyak teman-teman. Ini and many more. Kenapa and many more? Karena kalau dijabarin mungkin 50 slide, 80 slide nggak cukup teman-teman. Ya, jadi saya jabarin segini-gini dulu aja gitu ya. Kalau pengen tanya lebih lanjutnya lagi, boleh langsung nanti ketemu dengan Kalbis Institute. Ya, kita sudah open dari Senin sampai Sabtu. Ya, ini untuk himpunan mahasiswanya. Untuk kegiatan mahasiswa, kita di sini menuntut anak-anak itu untuk aktif di UKM dan juga himpunan mahasiswa. Jadi kalau di Kalbis itu kurang terkenal kupu-kupu, teman-teman. Ya, kupu-kupu adalah singkatan kuliah pulang, ya. Kalau di Kalbis Institute kita sudah berevolusi menjadi kura-kura, teman-teman. Ya, kerjaan kita jadi kura-kura. Kura-kura itu artinya adalah kuliah rapat. Jadi banyak banget kegiatannya, teman-teman. Ya, ini untuk fasilitasnya, gedungnya 8 lantai, gedung sendiri bukan gedung pinjaman. Ya, entire buildingnya itu memang punya Kalbis, dan salah satu komitmennya Kalbe dan juga Kalbis untuk memperkecil gap yang tadi saya bilang di awal, teman-teman, itu dari konsep building atau enggak atmosfer buildingnya, teman-teman. Teman-teman boleh cek, jarang banget ada kampus yang entire buildingnya itu dari kaca, seperti perkantoran. Karena kita pengen membuat anak-anak sebelum mereka masuk atau enggak dari orientations, mereka tahu Kalbis Institute, mereka sudah tahu, oh ternyata atmosfer perkuliahan bisnis itu memang seperti ini. Gitu ya, sangat berbeda, teman-teman. Ya. Dan ini adalah LIPS juga, ini learning management sistemnya kita. Ya, ini seperti Facebook, tapi buat anak-anak Kalbis, teman-teman. Jadi pengen download atau pengen lihat tugas, bisa langsung di sini. Ya, jadi waktu pas ada pandemik atau online class gitu, kita udah nggak ada masalah, teman-teman. Kenapa? Karena memang kita sudah deliver atau kita udah prepares anything buat teman-teman dunia perkuliahan, apapun kondisinya. Ya, ini admission-nya, mau ketemu dengan saya boleh banget nanti di sini. Ya, ini untuk modern facilities-nya, 8 lantai terhubung dengan eskalator dan lift. Kalau nggak percaya, boleh langsung datang ke sini. Ya, standar classroom-nya juga seperti itu, teman-teman. Ada tematik classroom-nya, ada standar classroom-nya. Satu kelas itu kita cuma 20-an anak, teman-teman, nggak usah kaget gitu ya. Jadi teman-teman, kita yang tadi saya infokan, kita mendeliver atau memberikan yang terbaik buat teman-teman. Jadi di sini kita nggak ada yang namanya satu angkatan itu lebih dari 1.000, 2.000, 3.000 orang. Enggak. Kenapa? Karena kita memang sangat menjaga kualitasnya, teman-teman. Ya, ini Business Strategy Lab, ini Digital Accounting Lab, Cyber Security Lab, teman-teman. Di sini ada DKV Classroom, DKV Workshop Room, Broadcasting Studio, salah satu yang terbaik juga. Ya, untuk library juga satu yang terbaik, karena kita memperoleh akreditasi juga untuk library-nya, ya, penghargaan dari Perpustakaan Nasional Indonesia. Dan ini ada student lounge-nya, jadi buat teman-teman yang di sini pengen santai-santai gitu kan, daripada keluar panas dan lain-lain gitu ya, di sini ada student lounge-nya. Ini UKM facilities-nya, ada lapangan basket, futsal, semi-indoor-nya gitu ya, studio band-nya, ada ruang narinya, kita juga ada investment gallery buat teman-teman yang di sini, apapun jurusannya, entah itu DKV yang nggak related dengan dunia persahaman atau investasi, teman-teman juga boleh ke sini. Jadi siapa tahu teman-teman mau mengembangkan atau menginvestasikan dananya daripada misi FOIA, visi FOIA gitu kan, nah lebih baik visinya boleh FOIA, tapi misinya investasi gitu kan, ujung-ujungnya kita FOIA gitu kan. Nah, jadi ini adalah salah satu yang kita bisa berikan buat teman-teman, gimana caranya mengelola keuangan teman-teman sejak usia dini, gitu ya. Ini untuk dari segi beasiswanya, jadi kalau teman-teman bertanya mengenai beasiswanya, Kalbis Institute dan juga Kalbis Foundations, kita juga menyediakan banyak sekali slot beasiswa buat teman-teman. Kita ada 2 tipikal beasiswa, yaitu beasiswa Kalbis Foundations, untuk yang 100%, ya, free, jadi 4 tahun kami yang tanggung untuk gelar sarjana dan juga sertifikasi profesional. Dan juga yang kedua adalah beasiswa yang parsial, yaitu berdasarkan nilai rapot, ya teman-teman ya, itu bisa dapat potongan uang bebas uang pangkal dan juga potongan per semesternya. Ya. Dan untuk syarat-syaratnya, teman-teman bisa lihat di sini syarat-syaratnya. Jadi memang kalau teman-teman punya sertifikat atau punya prestasi di bidang akademik atau non-akademik, ya teman-teman boleh coba beasiswa Kalbis Foundation-nya, tapi harus tes lolos tertulis dan juga wawancara dan juga psikotes dari kita. Kalau tidak, akan diberikan atau akan otomatis downgrade ke beasiswa Kalbis Prestasi, uang pangkal dan juga potongan biaya per semesternya. Ya, kalau teman-teman di sini ada adiknya, pengen kuliah adiknya di sini, gitu ya, itu juga akan ada tambahan karena di sini ada beasiswa profesi guru atau Kalbiser sibling, akan ada tambahan potongan uang gedung atau uang peralatan. Dan juga kalau misalkan memang saudara kandungnya ada yang atau keluarga kandungnya yang bekerja di perusahaan Kalbe Group, itu juga bisa dapat langsung bebas uang peralatan. Nah, kalau bertanya berapa sih Kak biaya investasinya? boleh nanti chat ke saya akan jelaskan lebih detail karena terkendala waktu, nanti saya akan berikan informasi kepada teman-teman. Ini untuk alur pendaftaran ya. Jadi buat teman-teman kelas 12 yang saat ini mungkin ada di sini, yang masih menunggu SBM atau enggak yang lain gitu ya, atau enggak masih bingung, atau enggak sudah fix masuk ke Kalbis, boleh banget. Teman-teman tinggal melakukan pembelian formulir, harga formulirnya 300.000 ya, tapi karena teman-teman ikut acara ini, itu ada dapat potongan harga dari 300.000 jadi 100.000 teman-teman. Ya, lumayan 200.000-nya buat beli tiket nonton sama popcorn dan lain-lain gitu ya, buat malam mingguan kan hari ini ya. Nah, gitu. Jadi boleh teman-teman dicoba dengan promo diskon untuk formulirnya, teman-teman bisa coba, bisa dapetin beasiswa sampai puluhan juta ya. Tesnya online, terdekat ini kita akan mengadakan tes di sekitar tanggal 28 Mei, teman-teman. Ya, teman-teman boleh nanti ikut tesnya juga, tinggal melakukan pembelian formulir dari 300.000 jadi 100.000. Seleksi juga online. Jadi nanti juga semuanya juga serba online, teman-teman. Ya, ini lokasinya, teman-teman boleh cek melalui Google Maps ya, itu enak banget untuk aksesnya, karena depannya itu langsung halte busway Pulau Mas Bypass, teman-teman. Jadi akses itu enak banget. Ini ada testimoninya, ya ini juga kalau dijabarin juga banyak banget takutnya gitu ya, karena waktunya juga nggak gitu banyak. Ini salah satunya buat teman-teman yang kemarin sempat booming gitu kan di dunia per-tiktokan dan juga dunia pertelevisian ya, yang Kak Geraldine gitu kan. Nah, ini juga salah satu alumni dari Kalbis Institute. Ini Sofi Kemala, atlet telang Indonesia. Ya, ini adalah Bella, sekarang kerja di Deloitte, teman-teman. Salah satu dream company-nya anak-anak accounting, kita biasa langganan anak-anak itu yang masuk ke sana. Ini adalah Kristijan, sekarang kerja di Dubai ya sebagai developer ya. Nah, ini adalah kos-kosannya. Mungkin tadi bisa ada yang dari Bali gitu ya, ada yang dari Sumatera, ada yang dari Papua dan lain-lain. Boleh banget di belakangnya kita itu, di belakang gedungnya Kalbis Institute itu adalah perumahan, dan perumahannya itu biasanya itu banyak banget kos-kosannya. Dan kalau kita punya kos-kosan sendiri juga, ada 2 macam kos-kosan gitu ya. Dan kita juga punya banyak sekali rekanan kos-kosan sekitaran Kalbis, teman-teman. Ya, jadi teman-teman nggak usah khawatir. Nanti dari timnya saya akan ngebantu teman-teman untuk kita cari kos-kosan bareng-bareng gitu ya. Kita sesuaikan juga dengan widgetnya teman-teman gitu ya. Nah, mungkin itu yang bisa saya sampaikan. Ini adalah kontak personnya saya. Boleh di screenshot juga. Nanti mungkin saya akan catat di infokan di grup chat juga ya. Ini nomor WhatsApp saya, ini email saya. So if you have any questions yang lebih detail, atau nggak pengen ketemu dengan dosen langsung, atau nggak pengen keliling-keliling kampus, feel free. Senin sampai Sabtu kita sudah open jam 8 sampai jam 5. Untuk Sabtunya kita jam 9 sampai jam 3 sore, teman-teman. Ya, boleh banget. Mungkin itu yang bisa saya informasikan. Terima kasih banyak atas waktunya. Semoga sudah cukup tahu mengenai tentang Kalbis Institute dan bisa jadi salah satu alternatif pilihan buat teman-teman untuk melanjutkan dunia perkuliahan, entah itu S1 atau enggak S2 gitu ya. Poin utamanya simple, teman-teman. Teman-teman persiapkan dari sekarang, karena saingan di dunia industri itu sudah sangat tough sekali sekarang. Ya, tapi saya berani jamin dengan teman-teman ikut webinar di Kalbis Institute ini, teman-teman sudah cukup banyak pengalaman dan juga melek untuk di bidang industrialnya. Jadi teman-teman sudah siap apa yang perlu dipersiapkan, apa yang nanti teman-teman akan hadapi, dan teman-teman siap untuk menghadapi itu ya bersama Kalbis Institute. Mungkin gitu aja. Terima kasih banyak atas waktunya. I will give it back to Miss Farah.
Oke, terima kasih banyak Pak Robi atas information session-nya tentang Kalbis dan tentang Business Psychology di Kalbis Institute ya. Jadi untuk teman-teman yang ingin bertanya-tanya lebih lanjut tentang program studi yang ada di Kalbis, atau mungkin tentang Business Psychology yang ada di Kalbis, silakan langsung aja chat Bapak Robi ya di nomor atau email yang sudah tertera di situ. Oke, untuk teman-teman yang memenangkan voucher MAP, tadi udah ada 10 listnya, jangan lupa kirimkan nama, nomor HP, email, dan alamat kalian ke kami segera ya. Masih ada beberapa yang belum mengirimkan, seperti Rachel Oktaviani, ada Syarif, Ayolanda, Feni Wulansari, dan juga Idewa Ayu Chandra Gita Dewi. Okay, so finally we have come to an end of our webinar. It is a pleasure to be part of this informative webinar, and I would like to thank to all the participants as well as the committee members I would like to thank all the participants as well as the organizing committee. Thank you very much and see you on the next webinar. Jangan lupa kirimkan alamat, nama, dan juga informasi tentang kalian ya bagi para pemenang MAP. Thank you very much and see you again. Bye.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Farah, Pak Robi, and all of the participants. We'll see you soon.
Terima kasih banyak
Do you want to be a reliable businessman and leader? What you need the most is to study business psychology management at Psychologists Institute. These are the reasons why you should choose business psychology management at Psychologists Institute. Business psychology management at Psychologists Institute will teach you how to create a healthy, productive, and mutually beneficial relationship between individuals and organizations. Unlike any other institutions, business psychology management at Psychologists Institute is directly taught by practitioners. You will get an opportunity to take a certification program. Psychologists Institute is also a member of American Institute of Business Psychology and the Association for Business Psychology. You can also get benefits such as access to resources in the form of journals, literature, and get the privilege to participate in webinars. Get connections with institutions and industries that are also member of IOBP and ABP. Be a reliable businessman and leader with Psychologists Institute. Psychologists Institute, transforming hearts and minds.